Thank you for joining us on Channel 1 Business Insight. My name is Caroline Jenga, and today we highlight the Communication Authority of Kenya that has issued a fresh alert on the resurgence of an international phone call scam dubbed Wangiri. And also, President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed Kenya Ports Authority, the Anti-Counterfeit Agency, and the Kenya Revenue Authority to collaborate to fight the illicit trade. And also tonight on Magical, since we highlight Rusinga Island, that will be coming up right after my colleague Victor Muyakane to get to tell us what is happening across the country.
Right, we have quite a lot in store for you. We have quite a lot, and arguably the biggest news of the day remains the Salai Dam scandal, or rather, not really a scandal rather, but the tragedy that really happened at Salai Dam last night. The updated death toll keeps rising, and we should be able to give you more details of that and other stories in our roundup.
Get the highlights.
Pain, anger, and anguish as the death toll in the Patel Dam tragedy soars. President Kenyatta talks tough on corruption, warning those engaging in the vice of dire consequences. And calls to speed up resolution of the ongoing lecturers' strike reverberate as its effects continue to bite. Right, welcome to this night's bulletin. We have, like I said earlier, quite a lot in store for you. And arguably the biggest news going on right now across all media houses and all headlines is, of course, the Salai Dam situation. We have the latest figures, and we shall be giving you information on that, and we invite you to take part in this and share with us your views on this matter as well as other stories. Of course, the SMS lines are on, and we should be able to get your feedback in the course of this bulletin. Now, the number of fatalities in the Patel Dam tragedy has risen to 44, while 40 others are listed as missing. Rescue teams are still on the ground, sifting through the mud as efforts to recover those unaccounted for continue. At around 8 p.m. last night, just as many of the over 400 families and over 2,000 residents bordering the Salai Dam in Subukia were settling down to sleep, disaster struck. The Patel Dam, a huge 80-acre water pan, broke its banks, releasing unbelievably huge quantities of water and mud, which swept over a 2-kilometer radius, leaving in its wake a trail of destruction.
Jana jioni kama saa 2 hivi, kabla hajafika saa 2, tukasikia sauti kubwa kama mvua, lakini haikuwa ni mvua. Tumaliza dakika chache hivyo, hata tukujielewa tena, tukasikia tu nyumba imegongwa na kuinuliwa na maji kusukuma. Baada ya maji ilipotulia, ikasukuma mahali ikatulia, tukaacha kuwa na nguvu nyingi. Sasa nikatokea hapo, lakini ikazidi kuja mingi zaidi nikiwa mahali nimesimama kando ya nyumba
juu. Sasa mimi nikatokea mlango ya mbele, msichana itokea mlango ya nyuma na mimi ya mbele. Alafu tena wote wakatoka wakachomoka pande wakanifuata. Pale ndio tulichomokea pale. Tukabebwa sasa na maji. Sasa ilikuwa juu chini, kugongeshwa chini nini. Mimi hata ilikuwa by the grace of God, sababu nilikuwa nimeketi hapa. Hapa kama sio nini, hapa hii mawe yote ingenilalia hapa. Sababu hii mawe yote unaona hapa imetoka huko juu. Yote ikakuja ikasobwa imewekwa hapa.
At least 32 people have been confirmed dead, most of them women and children, with the number rising as rescue and recovery efforts continue. 47 others were rescued and taken to the nearby Mailikumi, Bahati Sub-County and Nakuru Level 5 hospitals, where 41 have already been discharged. But there are others who remain unaccounted for and are feared to be dead, trapped in the thick mud and water that covers what used to be their homes. As dazed and shell-shocked locals contemplate their fate, Local and national leaders, led by Nakuru Governor Lee Kinyanjui and Interior Minister Dr. Fred Matiang'i, have assured locals of government support in form of emergency supplies and reconstruction, even as rescue and post-disaster efforts continue.
Tafadhali pole sana. We have lost a lot of lives here, and this is very tragic. Tusaidie the families that have been affected, and we also try to help these people rebuild and go back to normal life.
Tungetaka katika hiyo registration ambayo tumefanya, tafadhali muweze kujiregister. Baada ya hapa tuliweza kuongea kwamba tutatafuta chakula na wale ambao wamehusika wataweza kusaidika. Kwa hivyo pia hiyo registration itatusaidia katika hiyo kazi.
About 5 schools sustained varying levels of damage, with the Ministry of Education ordering the closure of the most affected, Solai Boys High School. Kenya Power installations were also damaged, leading to the company announcing interruption of service to Solai, Patel Farm, Kibarunja Farm, Kamkunji, Larger Subukia, Flora Ora, Kisanana, and all adjacent customers. Addressing senior officials from the Ministries of Water and Agriculture at his current office in Nairobi today, Deputy President William Ruto directed contractors to comply with the accepted engineering standards for safety while building dams to avert calamities caused by poor workmanship. Ruto said dams built to store water sometimes failed in some parts of the country, with the resulting loss of life, social, economic, financial, and environmental losses being huge. Once again, by the time we did that story, the death toll was at 32. Right now, information reaching our news desk is that the death toll is up to 44, and there are about 40, actually over 40 people still unaccounted for. We should be able to give you information as and when we have it. Keep tabs on the situation. You can look at our website, www.kbc.co.ke, for all the latest updates, as well as our Twitter handle, which is at KBC Channel 1, once again for all the latest updates. Now, the situation for victims of the ongoing floods is quickly turning into that of desperation, with heavy rains complicating humanitarian efforts. And as Irene Muchuma-Odim reports, the crisis could worsen, with a weatherman predicting sustained rains in western, central, and coastal regions.
The number of displaced persons owing to flooding reached 222,000, with 132 deaths reported countrywide. The Kenya Red Cross has moved in to avert waterborne diseases in Kilifi County, which is among the worst affected by flooding. The humanitarian agency has installed a water treatment plant at a cost of 12 million shillings at River Sabaki, which is expected to supply clean, safe water to 22,000 flood victims.
Tumeanzisha mradi wa kuweza purify haya maji ya mto ili yaweze kuwa safi na salama.
The water will be supplied to displaced families in Malindi and Magarini using water boozers provided by the county government. They are also distributing 10,000 sachets of water purifiers. At the same time, they have also erected toilets and are conducting medical outreaches in the camps.
Which is a plant that can produce between 45,000 to 50,000 liters per hour to be able to support this community that has been affected. This plant will be ready up and running before end of business today.
Separately, the Kenya Meteorological Department is warning there will be increased rainfall in western, coastal and central regions.
For the coastal region, this is their peak rainfall month. And like we saw in the recent advisory that we made, for the last 1 week or so, they have been being pounded by very heavy rainfall.
KMD Director Peter Ambenje says the heavy rains are also being experienced in neighboring Uganda, Rwanda and Tanzania. He attributed the increased downpour to what he termed as Madden-Julian oscillation, which has hit the East Africa region. Meanwhile, emotions ran high as bodies of those who perished at a landslide in Murang'a County were put to rest in Kahatia village in the region. The four, aged 62, 49, 19 and 15, were killed in their sleep when their house was covered by mud. The area MP appealed to the government to increase funding for disaster management.
Hii maneno ya disaster sio maneno ya kugonja. Waharakishe ndio maisha ya watu wameathirika irudi pale normal.
The country has in the past few weeks witnessed flash floods and mudslides as a result of heavy rains.
Now, the workers' unions are planning to organize a mass demonstration to push the government to resolve the ongoing lecturers' strike that entered its 71st day today. The unions calling on the government to speedily resolve the dispute by committing to a negotiating table.
The University Academic Staff Union, Kenya University Staff Union, and the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union were meeting to strategize on how to deal with what they termed as an employer unwilling to negotiate. And after a meeting that lasted for the better part of a morning, the unions announced a plan to organize a mass demonstration meant to push the government to end the lecturer strike.
So that there is no electricity, there is no water in your houses, there is no school which is ongoing, there is no university which is teaching, there is no hospital working, no health center. Everything comes to a standstill so that everybody can come to the table and negotiate.
The unions have accused the government of failing to commit to the negotiating table with a counter offer exacerbating the labor dispute that is now in its third month.
I am a lecturer. I'm not going back to work. We are not boarding together with our students.
KMPD accusing the government of reneging on a CBA they had signed last year that would see a salary increment for medical lecturers and medical superintendents.
We are ready to sit on the table. We have engaged before, but I think government also needs to be serious. Na sisi pia tunaomba wananchi, tafadhalini, ongea na wabunge na wanasiasa, hata rais, hata hii handshake pia walete kwa hii maneno ya workers.
Their stance appears a continuation of their position that lecturers will not get back to the lecture halls until their employer bats the eye.
We want to say very clearly that those who are found teaching and offering academic services in this university, in this college, will not be lecturers. And students must not allow themselves to be addressed by those who are not qualified to do so.
Yesterday, Higher Education peers Professor Mishen Ntiba pleaded with the striking dons to resume work and allow the government to come up with a conclusive deal, arguing that attempts to do so had been rocked by the economic misfortunes that the country has had since last year following a protracted campaign period. John Jacob Curia, Channel 1 News.
Our traders in Westlands woke up to a rude shock following the demolition of their business premises by the government to pave way for the expansion of the Lower Kabete and Peponi roads. The demolition, which was executed under tight security, was ordered by the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. The traders are decrying the loss of their property, faulting the government for allegedly failing to provide alternative market space to relocate all the 3,000 traders who were affected.
Holding grounds Westlands Ring Road. These were the scenes that greeted some of the traders who arrived at the place of work early Thursday morning. Debris, scattered iron sheets and their wares strewn on the ground. The vendors watched helplessly as the structures came tumbling amid tight police security. Some traders were, however, lucky to salvage their goods after they got wind of the planned demolition on Wednesday evening and removed their property.
Watu wote nitawapeleka wapi mimi kama chairman wao? Unaona, shauri wote ni wafanyabiashara na wanatafutia familia zao na wamekaa hapa zaidi ya miaka.
Sasa tumeadhirika, hatujui sasa tutafanya namna gani. Tuko na watoto wako nyumbani wanaelekea shule.
Kenya Urban Roads Authority say they are paving way for the redesign of the road to allow expansion and ease congestion. The traders were issued with a notice on the 13th of April to vacate by the 27th of April. Pleas by the traders for an extension of the deadline to allow completion of a new market fell on deaf ears.
Wenye tuna blame ni county government ya hapa Nairobi. Juu wametudanganya for a long time. Soko watutengenezei. Kwa hivyo wananchi tunaumia. Sasa sijui tutasaidiwa na nani? Juu hata sema tutasaidiwa na serikali, tutasaidiwa na Mungu tu.
Mimi nauza nguo na tengeneza saa. Na nimekaa kwa hii soko karibu mwaka 30. na tulitolewa kwa hii pale hiyo mali wanajenga. Wakijengia sisi hapa, wakasema tukae mwaka 2 wamalize soko. Hiyo soko imemaliza mwaka 10 sasa.
The traders are blaming the national government for the slow pace in construction of the market, which they say has seen 3 contractors on site but is yet to be completed. The market under construction can only accommodate 1,000 traders, yet there were 3,000 traders here. Some of the traders will be moved to City Park Market, while others will be moved to Westland's main market. What was once a source of income for close to 3,000 traders along Ring Road in Westlands was Thursday morning brought down by the National Construction Authority. But the defiant traders here maintain that they will not move an inch until the national and county governments provide them with an alternative. Brenda Zadaradido, Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
KNUT Secretary General Wilson Sossion can temporarily breathe a sigh of relief after the court's extended orders blocking the Registrar of Trade Unions from removing his name from the list of KNUT officials. Justice Maureen Onyango ruled that there was no evidence produced in court to support claims of Sosion's replacement, or rather that Sosion's replacement was done in line with the union's rules. Ben Chumba with the story.
The embattled NAT Secretary General Wilson Sossion appears to be a man with the proverbial 9 lives, following a ruling by the Employment and Labor Relations Court stopping any person from purportedly taking over as the Secretary General. Justice Maureen Onyango barred the removal of his name from the records at the Registrar of Trade Unions and TSC pending the hearing and determination of the case.
It is further my finding that there is no evidence that the alleged changes were made before or after service of the court order, a matter that can only be determined upon evidence being submitted by the parties with the findings there is no valid reason for not extending the interim orders, which are hereby extended pending orders.
The ruling presenting a legal crux for the Deputy Secretary General Osborne Otieno, who wanted Sosion's name removed, arguing his replacement was within the union's rules. Otieno wanted to be allowed to continue acting and discharging his mandate as Secretary General in the wake of concerns that the teachers' union's operations will be paralyzed for lack of signatories.
Told the teachers in the Republic of Kenya to remain calm as this problem resolves itself. I'm sure it shall resolve itself. Yes. Teachers of Kenya should remain united. Forever. We should not be tempted to engage in activities that destroy a union that has been in existence for 60 years. We must accept to work together within ourselves and reject outsiders who are sponsoring coups and disruption.
Ben Chumba reporting for Scales of Justice.
We now take a short break. We'll be right back with more content. Do stay tuned.
Je, waweza fanya nini kwa dakika 4? Na mega dola. Unaweza piga chef? Na mega dola. Kila kitu ni mega. Waweza pika ugali? Na mega dola. Pesa hapa ni mega. Na mega. Labda waweza fua nguo? Ni mega. Na mega dola. Ama unaweza tengeneza milioni 30. 4 minutes are enough to win big with Mega Dollar. Just go to Lipa na M-Pesa, select Pay Bill, enter business number 295888, enter account name KBC, deposit 10 shillings or more, enter your PIN and press OK, then choose 10 numbers from 1 to 80 and send to 29588. And you can win up to 30 million shillings every 4 minutes. Deposit, play, and win with Mega Dollar. The big game for big winners.
The Easy Banking app is your bank anywhere, anytime. Everything you do at the bank is on Easy Banking app. You can use the app to send money, pay bills, buy and pay for goods and services, access easy loans, check the status of your account, save for future goals, and so much more. And now you can enjoy an even better banking experience with a just updated Easy Banking app. Loaded with a great suite of powerful features, so you're always in control of your banking lifestyle wherever you are. Download the Easy Banking app from Google Play Store or App Store and link your Equity Bank account. If you do not have an Equity Bank account, open one hapo from the app. Easy Banking. Experience convenience in life.
Species have adapted to their environment through millions of years to perform exceptional feats of speed, power, agility, and grace. It ensures that they can pick themselves up after a fall. What happens when the environment is changed? Will they adapt in time? Will their performance be shaken?
Pango mzima
Wanjoma Dongo Mirwa Koreko Bunda,
ile show kubwa East Africa.
Top Mashariki, just ring the alarm. I say ring it, ring it, ring it like so.
Top Mashariki.
Uzuri wangu bei ghali, haupati kiutani. Mzungu wangu nyumbani, ananipa burudani.
Time now to take a look at the latest in business. My name is Carol Jenga, and today we will ask you what is needed to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya. That will be the topic of discussion tonight: sustainability and inclusiveness in business. And I have given you where I can ask you what is needed again to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya. You can either answer with innovativeness or need to do good on our Twitter handle at KBC Channel 1 or 222162. You can use that SMS line. Now we start our bulletin with the Communication Authority of Kenya has issued a fresh alert on the resurgence of an international phone call scam dubbed Wangiri, first reported in the country in January this year. The scheme is designed to lure phone users into returning missed international calls, upon which they are unknowingly redirected to premium numbers that drain their airtime. Here is details of that story.
Named after the Japanese word which loosely translates to wandering and cut, Wangiri calls involve users receiving a mysterious missed call from overseas numbers. Most of the calls are reported to be international numbers, with frequent prefixes being, among others, +41 from Switzerland, +963 from Syria, +252 from Somalia, and +37 from Latvia. The scammers are believed to purchase the phone numbers used in the scam from the dark web, a hidden part of the internet well known for buying and selling of illegal goods and services. Having first hit the country in January this year, the Communications Authority in a statement has warned that the Wangiri scam is here with us again and is urging consumers to take caution. Victims of the scam receive very brief or missed calls from unknown international numbers, with a scheme designed to lure phone users into returning the urgent international calls, upon which they are knowingly directed to premium numbers that drain their airtime. The longer the victim stays online, the more they lose to the scammers. This further means that postpaid subscribers are likely to lose more money as they receive their bills at the end of the month. To protect yourself from the scammers, the CA is advising consumers not to return any international call from numbers that they do not recognize, and if one has been a victim already, to report the number to respective service providers to block the numbers. Preventing these scam calls is difficult for telecom firms because it would be imprudent to block an entire country prefix from calling into a network. So far, the pervasive scam has been reported elsewhere across the world, with leading telecom firms in Europe and the US raising the alarm. Nicholas Ndwati, Business Insight.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed the Kenya Ports Authority, the Anti-Counterfeit Agency, the Kenya Revenue Authority and other relevant government agencies to collaborate more in the fight against illicit trade. President Kenyatta decried the high level of corruption and bribery in the country, which he says is detrimental to not just the manufacturing sector, but to the realization of the Big Four agenda. The president has appointed the deputy head of public service, Wanyama Musiambu, to head a task force that will develop and implement necessary interventions.
During the 8th Presidential Roundtable Forum with the Kenya Private Sector Alliance at State House, Nairobi, manufacturers decried the high level of illicit trade, which they said was accounting for about 40% of the goods in the country.
And it's difficult to get investors to invest in this market when they're competing against illicit trade, be they local or foreign. It also threatens your Big Four agenda, as we have evidence of fake drugs, seeds, steel, and even spare parts could be causing some of the accidents that we are seeing on the road.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, however, put the Anti-Counterfeit Agency, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and the Kenya Revenue Authority to task to explain why the country was losing about 200 billion shillings annually to this vice, despite the numerous interventions and laws in place. The head of state condemned the high level of bribery in clearing goods at the port of Mombasa, as well as acquiring KEBS stamps, saying it was the main cause of increased importation of counterfeit and substandard goods that are not only putting the lives of Kenyans at risk, but also hurting the economy. To address this, President Kenyatta appointed the Deputy Head of Public Service, Wanyama Musiambu, to head a task force that will develop and implement key interventions to restrain illicit trade. The task force will comprise of, among others, the heads of the Kenya Ports Authority, the Anti-Counterfeit Agency, the Kenya Revenue Authority, the National Police Service, the Office of the Attorney General, officials from the Ministry of Trade, and other relevant players. The interventions proposed by manufacturers include declaring illicit trade a national disaster, having a well-resourced multi-institutional agency approach and supportive legislation, sealing porous borders, as well as implementing the Trade Remedies Act 2017. They also want the government to impose higher taxes on imported finished goods, which offer unfair competition to locally produced goods.
Around the Big Four, there are excellent opportunities for private sector, which has been declining recently for various reasons. And the opportunities are for both the local private sector, the joint ventures, both for foreign firms and partnership with local private sector, but also partnership with government.
Manufacturers have also petitioned the government to remove all taxes and levies on power bills to reduce the cost of electricity. However, Energy PS Joseph Njoroge says removing such levies would require deliberations to ensure all regulations are followed.
Unfortunately, we continue to pay between 16 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And in 2013, industry was promised 9 cents by 2016. Our proposal is only 60% of a typical power bill is power consumption.
Ruth Mutegi for Business Insight.
Now we focus on our magical scenes, our weekly segment, and today we highlight Rusinga Island, which hosts about 360 species of local and migratory birds, a majority of which are not found elsewhere in Kenya. The island is one of the breeding sites for water birds found around Lake Victoria, making it a bird lover's paradise and offering excellent photography opportunities, as Irene Muchuma Odim highlights in this week's episode of Magical Scenes.
Rusinga Island is one of Kenya's best kept secrets owing to its location and access. For an unforgettable adventure, my team and I traveled by road from Kisumu via Kogelo through Luanda Kutieno. You can as well travel by air or boat from Kisumu to this amazing island. We booked ourselves in one of the lodges at the island for the night And when we thought we had seen it all during our journey, we later discovered it was just but the beginning. Our host took us through on what to do while at the island. One of our tour guides was quick to propose a tour to the Birds Island, one of its kind in Kenya, with about 360 species of birds. Unlike me, one of my colleagues was not a fan of birds, and we could not convince him to join us on this 20 minutes boat ride to the Birds Island. The small island is one of the important breeding sites for water birds on Lake Victoria. The island is filled with varied species of birds, creating a bird lover's paradise and excellent photography opportunities. Everywhere we looked, the birds could either be leaping on the water, perched on the trees, flying, playing, or feeding.
You can see there are very many birds. Most of them are water birds. The white ones with black head and black tail, those are called egrets. They're called ibis. We've got two species of ibis. There's the dada ibis and the sacred ibis. The white ones, the completely white ones, are called egrets. We've got two species as well. There's a long, the little egrets and the cattle egrets. Here we can also see the cormorants, the black ones you see over there. Those are called the great cormorants and the long-tailed cormorants, the small one.
The birds share the island with tens of manta lizards.
Apart from the birds, all the bird life here, we've got some huge monitor lizards and otters as well, and we've occasionally spotted the spitting cobras around, but not very many.
I was told in the evening the population of the birds rises. There are so many birds behind us. This is the Birds Island, but I'm told they are normally in more numbers in the night. At the moment, they have gone to look for fish at the fishing island before they come back. And the ones that we see here, most of them are the chicks. Even though many of the birds are brightly colored and exotic looking, they are easy to identify and master, with the most being plovers and hammercocks. When we were heading back to the lodge for lunch, we were lucky to spot a flamingo. In Rosinga, flamingos normally walk along the beach lines. Rosinga Island is surrounded by a magical beach line, ideal for nature walks and holidaying. Much like with gardening, living around water bodies brings a sense of calm and relaxation. So my team took advantage of the lounge for the afternoon, having a recap on the birds of Rusinga. A captivating experience that made a colleague of ours who refused to accompany us to consider visiting the island, or Chula as the islanders call it. Irene Chumodin, Magical Sense in the county of Homa Bay.
Indeed, Rusinga Island is a beautiful place to visit. Our topic of discussion tonight is sustainable, inclusive business. And in studio, I will be talking to Karine Boomsma, who is the Director of Sustainable Inclusive Business in Kenya. And we'll be talking about how businesses can use sustainability and inclusiveness to make profits, as well as make sure they are impactful to the society. And we have asked you a question on our Twitter page, and it's what is needed to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya. What is needed to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya? And you can choose from either innovativeness or need to do good. That question is on our Twitter page. Also, you can use our SMS line, that is 22162, or you can tweet me directly at Carol W. Jenga, and I will sample some of your views as we continue with this bulletin. Now, moving on, the Competition Authority of Kenya has today come under fire for failing to protect local products from unfair competition posed by imports in retail outlets. Members of Senate Committee on Trade accused the Competition Authority of Kenya of doing little to to compel supermarkets to give local products priority over imported goods that they legislators say have flooded supermarkets' shelves. CEK Director General Wangombe Karaoke, however, said Kenya lacks a law and policy on retail services, which has made it difficult for extensive oversight to ensure sustainability and accountability in the retail sector.
Members of the Senate Committee on Trade have been concerned that local supermarkets are increasingly being flooded by imports, even when the same products are made locally. They believe the watchdog is failing Kenyans by doing little to protect local producers from unfair competition posed by the imports.
Every Kenyan will say, we want to buy Kenyan, made in Kenya. But what is that made in Kenya?
We have not said that the imported goods are the ones which are killing the supermarkets. We just raised this because it's a public interest issue, which we feel that you being representatives of the Kenyans, that there's need of us thinking together to see how. I'll be happy to walk in a supermarket and see 90% it's locally made goods, but of high quality.
The retail sector has been facing several challenges highlighted by the closure of outlets, suppliers complaining about delayed payments and frosty labor relations. Many have been expecting government agencies such as the Competition Authority to step in to address the mess.
You know, what I would want to hear or to listen from you or from the person who is giving the reasons as to why the supermarkets died is something like maybe these are the sales and the overheads were too high. Maybe there was overemployment. Most money went to salaries and therefore they could not sustain themselves.
There is no current law which allows the authority to go and demand for those books. And that is why we are saying that there is need of coming up with regulations or a new regulatory framework to be allowing an agency, a government agency, to be looking at these books and to raise red flags.
CAK both believes lack of good corporate governance principles coupled with gaps in law are the major causes of collapse of major supermarkets in the country. He recommended that the government sells its stake in Uchumi supermarkets to concentrate on oversight and regulation. Edward Kabasa, Channel 1 News.
What happens when a career woman is passionate about farming? Does she have to choose between abandoning either or profession or farming? One Carol Tanui decided to pursue both. This week on Farm Talk, Ruth Mutegi tells us a story of a lab technician whose resilience is now earning her a fortune from dairy farming.
Wakulima, ongezeni kilimo. Hatutaki tena njaa irudi Kenya. Wakulima.
The sight of green, healthy maize welcomes you to this farm. The catch, however, is that this maize is not for human consumption. It is fodder for cattle. This is Lakata Dairies. 11 years ago, Carol Tanui was gifted this damsel known as Mukie on her wedding day. Today, she's the mother of 6 and a grandmother of about 10 of the cows on this farm.
For about 5 years, we didn't actually know what to do with the cows. But after some time, we were encouraged by my mom, who told us that actually cows can make a living. So we came, we bought about 10 acres here where we are right now. And then we kept the 5 cows here. After some time, the cows grew in number, and we were able to expand our dairy. We went ahead, we ordered a few cows from South Africa, the breeds that you've seen. And from there, we raised the milk production. We also improved the breed of our cows.
Carol, who is a lab technician by profession, says keeping dairy cows requires strategy. The structures must be well built to ensure the cows are comfortable.
We have encountered several challenges. One of them is getting the structure right. Like this structure, we've built it twice. There is a time we build it and we put the feeding trough too high. We had to redo and do a low feeding trough. We know that the cows feed from down, not up. So from the human perspective, you think that if you brought food up, the cow will be fine. But cow eats food from down the grass, and that is why we had to redo the structure and put it as low as where the cow feeds naturally.
It is also important to ensure the ground is warm. Here, sawdust works very well.
You can see that the floor can be so cold. Again, to absorb the urination and any water spillage.
This cow's feeding program is intense.
We feed our cows almost throughout, day and night. But majorly we add the feed in the morning after milking, and then we add it over lunchtime, and then at night before we sleep it is added. Then someone will wake up midnight to add the silage and the dry grass to the cows.
So, maize grown on this farm is cut, chopped, and buried here to prepare silage.
Why we opted to do maize silage our own and now convert into feeding cows is because we make much more yield in terms of the profitability from the farm as opposed to doing commercial farming, maize farming.
We don't like buying feed because the bought feed, you actually cannot tell what is in that feed. Somebody will tell you, I've mixed maize, but you cannot actually see it. But for us, we see the maize, and we know the nutritional content of maize is high.
Good feeding translates to more liters of milk. Carol uses this automatic system for milking, where each of the 18 cows already lactating here produce an average of 45 liters each per day.
We've had challenges with electricity, which goes and comes, as in we don't have, and we milk using electricity. So we are forced to go back to milking by hand, and so sometimes we get so late delivering our milk.
It is important to apply this disinfectant on the teats after milking to prevent infections. At Lakata Dairies, the milk is pasteurized before it gets to the market.
After pasteurizing and adding value to our milk, we sell at 60 shillings a litre, 60 to 70 shillings a litre, compared to the 20, 25 shillings a litre that we used to sell raw milk.
Cleanliness here is taken very seriously.
We have employed about 5 to 10 people. 3 of them are dedicated to just cleaning this place because the cows drop their droppings all the time. So their work is to clean, sweep, and remove the cow dung and take it to a place where we ferment it for use in the farm.
Carol hopes to expand her stock from the current 40 cows to about 60 in the next few months.
We are hoping to even get other products from the milk now. We are going a step higher to make cheese. We want to make our own yogurt, the vanilla and strawberry. That is what we want to do.
This dairy farming, you need to do it in a modernized way so that you make more money. Because personally, I'm a student of a dairy farmer. And my father, I think the maximum he would get in his life is 12 shillings a litre. So I don't want to go back to that age.
The cost of production is still very high in dairy farming. The key, however, is to come up with strategies that ensure you utilize locally available materials as much as possible. Ruth Mutegi for Farm Talk in Wasingishu County.
Wakulima ongezeni kilimo, hatutaki tena njaa irudi Kenya. Wakulima.
chango maitambaye zovine kide kide mwana usimama dede. Susumila hapa.
Mimi naitwa James Gosimo.
Ali B baby.
Gosimo Band. Sisi tutawakilisha Jumamosi hii tarehe 12 jamani. Bango Sound, Susumila, Ali B, Gosimo bwana no hapa kwa mdomo wa bata. Kocha ucheke.
Tarehe 12 mwezi huu wa 5 ndani ya Carnival usiku mkubwa yani Coast Night.
Raundi hii hatutaki utani.
Mambo kipwani, fika mwenyewe usingojee kuhadithiwa.
I think that we recognize our similarities, our commonalities. We also remember our history, that we are all these different nations, not because that was the natural division of who we were, but that others somehow came and divided our.
Species have adapted to their environment through millions of years to form exceptional feats of speed, power, agility, and grace. It ensures that they can pick themselves up after a fall. What happens when the environment is changed? Will they adapt in time? Will their performance be shaken?
Welcome back. You are watching Channel One Business Insight, and we are on this other end of the studio. And as I told you earlier on, our topic of discussion tonight is sustainable, inclusive business. And in studio with me is Corinne Bosma, who is the Director of Sustainable Inclusive Business here in Kenya. Thank you for coming to our studios. Maybe if I can mention a few facts that I have seen on Google, which has become most people's best friend, is that African business have the opportunity to unlock $350 billion a year in value from new opportunities that address socio-economic and environmental challenges. Companies can generate new revenue streams by improving and transforming their businesses models to solve issues such as access to markets, health, education, energy, and finance. And what I found most interesting is sustainability has moved away from nice to do to must do. You agree with that?
Very good. Yes, a very good introduction.
Okay, maybe we can start from the basic. What is inclusive business?
Sustainable and inclusive business is that you look at your business as a holistic entity, not as I'm only a business making profits, but you look at everything and you have a positive impact on people and planet, as well as your profits, because otherwise you're not a business. And people is people within your business, outside your business, in the community, and the impact your products and services have on the communities and people around you. And sustainability simply means that you want to last, but you can only last and be a successful business with a flourishing planet and not with a failing one. So you have to take care and look at the nature and the environment you operate in.
Okay, our big question tonight is we're asking what is needed to drive sustainable business inclusive here in Kenya, and maybe you can share with us some of your views of what you think about sustainability and inclusivism and the needs that are needed to drive SIB in Kenya.
Yeah, I know the questions and the answers you had as an option. We will just say something about that, because innovation you mentioned and doing good. Innovation should be in a responsible way, so need-driven. What kind of innovations do we need to solve issues? And are those innovations long-lasting? And the other thing is, if you look at doing good, it all boils down to your responsibility. There's no point of solving issues outside your scope while you're creating problems with your business or with how you behave. So we fundamentally, if we want to drive change, you fundamentally need to understand what is my responsibility. And your responsibility is not only as a business, but you're also a person. You're also a consumer. You're also a citizen by the end of the day. So you have to really look at your responsibility. And we encourage and challenge and support businesses to look, what do I do with my business? What is my business impact? Do I know my suppliers? Do they take care of their employees? How do they pollute the environment or not? So you look at your business, the value chain, and then you look at the end consumer.
So as SIB Kenya, is that what you do to support businesses maybe to become sustainable and inclusive? Maybe some of what you've mentioned?
Yes, so we do provide a lot of information, knowledge. We create events. We had a sustainable inclusive conference just last Friday where we brought together businesses, big and small, from Safaricom to Bitco. We had the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, but also great innovations from Orange Climate. We have Azuri with healthy food. There are so many. There were like 300 people, and they all represent businesses, small or big, NGOs, civil society, but also students and young talents. And I think that's also driving the change. We need to discuss together because we need to be together to drive the change. If you want to save on costs and you want to be more environmental friendly as a business, you might need a solution from a young entrepreneur. So we need to bring people together. So it's knowledge and it's networks.
Is there a difference between corporate social responsibility and sustainable inclusive business?
Depends on how you, what kind of definition you give. We started maybe like 10, 15 years ago with corporate social responsibility, and that's great because that's why we are here now today, but we have to move beyond that. Because what you see is that corporate social responsibility, when you don't look at your responsibility of your business impact, and you say, I make money, I have a bit of profit, let me donate to a good cause, like an orphanage, it doesn't have anything to do with your business DNA. So you might sell a very cheap product for 50 bob, and then your negative impact on the environment is 100 bob. So is that still a fair price? So you didn't calculate actually your impact of producing it, but you give away something. So we create one problem on one end and we try to solve it on the other hand. I think what really drives change is that you are responsible, no matter who you represent, for what you do. And if you look at that first, then you can start doing things beyond that as well.
But how can we change the mindset of entrepreneurs? Because most entrepreneurs are profit driven. Like, I need to make profit, my business, I need to, at the end of the month, to have this amount of money as profit. How do we change the mindset of entrepreneurs to ensure that what they're doing is impactful to the society and also to the environment?
Yeah, let's talk money and business, because you will not be, you can't call yourself a business and not making profits, because that makes your business sustainable. So we need to talk money, but we need to measure business success not only in the linear outcome profit. We also need to look at other ways of measuring benefits, because what we can talk about with business is that you reduce costs. If you change all your lights into LED lights, you save a lot of money on electricity. So there are many things, if you really look at your impact and what can you do differently, that actually are going to reduce your cost. If you invest in health insurance for your employees, your people who take sick leave will drop. So your productivity goes up, the employees' engagement goes up. So it's not straight profit, but it's a triple bottom line. So you make actually more money by having lower costs. And the other thing is you lower risks. And a lot of financial institutes are trying to look at those kind of things. They need to innovate, come up with new models as well. If you take care of you conserve your land as an agribusiness, the risk of not having great produce is much lower. So by taking care of that nature, by taking care of that well-balanced in nature, you're actually lowering your risk as a business, and therefore a bank can provide you a loan with a discount. So it's actually clever to really think sustainable and to look at all the components, because you're not an isolated entity. We are not. Everything is linked together. And the other thing is what you already mentioned, you create business. If you solve a problem, like access to clean water, access to health in a sustainable way, and you create a business model out of it, you solve an issue, but you also unlock a huge potential. Yeah.
So those are some of the benefits when you're sustainable and inclusive when you're building up your business. Yeah. Now let's talk about the new economy and also the 3 Ps: the planet, profits, and people. Expound more on especially the new economy.
Yeah, so in the new economy, you simply say that everything is linked together. You can't say, I'm a business, I just look beyond 5 years, and whatever I do, that is then finished. The new economy looks like at a positive impact on people and planet and profit. And to give an example, if we want to make the Big Four agenda a successful one, we need to do that sustainable. And what I mean with that is, take manufacturing and look at the construction sector. For instance, in Kenya, we dig sand and we sell it, but we import glass. So if you talk about manufacturing, you can create local manufacturing. That's a raw material, which is a Kenyan raw material, and we should actually keep it in the country as much as we can by producing what we need for the country. That creates employment. And then once we don't need it anymore, so we've used the raw materials and it's broken, it's gone, it's old, we bring it back into the material cycle by recycling it, and that generates employment as well, but you're also taking care of your own raw materials and you bring them back. So you need less raw materials and you're creating a circular economy, and that's great for everyone.
Okay. From what I'm gathering is that inclusivity means that it cuts across all sectors. Maybe let's say the hospitality industry, a hotel may be based in, let's say somewhere in Nanyuki. How can such kind of a hotel be impactful to the society or to the community where it is built?
Yeah, so again, you look at the business, you can take care of what do you do with your waste? What do you do with your water waste? Because in lodges and in touristic like areas like the Mara or Nanyuki, you have to come up with a good plan for your wastewater, because otherwise you're just actually polluting what you're selling. You're selling nature and culture, but you're polluting it at the same time. So you have to look at how do you deal with waste? Do you employ local community? Do you train them and empower them with the knowledge they need about how do you drive those business in a sustainable way, so that even 20 years down the line we still have the same businesses, but also that you become competitive with other markets. So you want to be competitive with Tanzania, and we're having a similar product, we need to be exceptionally good in other things and make sure that we conserve the people and the planet around.
So how can some of the challenges that businesses face or communities face be converted into viable business opportunities?
Yeah, there are many ways to look at it. It's a big question, because so you can look at a viable business solution is reducing cost, or a viable business solution is to create access to healthcare or to and health insurance in a way that, so access means literally that you can access. There is no point of having an innovation, solving an issue, like you have a water filter, but no one can afford it. So if you haven't thought about, if you want to really drive change and you want to make it the business viable, you need to make sure that all things are in place. So you can have a great product, but is the financial model matching the market? So you look at that. How is the distribution done? How do you get it there? So you look at all those components to make a business viable.
If we can go back a little bit to the Big Four, and it's basically based on 4 key pillars, which is manufacturing, housing, affordable housing, universal healthcare, and food security. And we'll focus a little bit on food security. Do you think with sustainable, inclusive business, maybe we can solve the food security gap that has existed for long?
Yes, and food is everyone's issue, I think. So if we talk to businesses, we always break food security down in 2 things. Food losses, so food waste, that makes business sense to have much less food waste. And we talk about food quality, because that's also, those 2 make sure that you can guarantee food security. Food losses, we need to feed the whole world, and we need to produce actually 40% more, but we are wasting 40% of the total amount of food we produce from farm to fork. So if we would not waste it, we would have solved the issue. The second thing is that if you look at the quality, it makes sense to do it in a sustainable and inclusive way. What do we mean? If you have one crop produce, it's very likely that your productivity of the input is not as much as if you would do cross-cropping. So you have to take care of the soil. If there's no nutrition in the soil and we are producing something and you eat it, you basically feed yourself with no food because there's not enough nutrition. So we really have to look at the quality of food, and also I think in Kenya especially, we have great produce which is all being exported. But what are we eating? So why is that same quality not available for us? And that also makes, again, business sense, because we need quality food. It keeps us healthy. There will be a demand for it from the consumers, and you tap into that need as well.
So is there a platform where entrepreneurs can share the same kind of concepts that you're talking about and discuss and come up with solutions, basically to solve issues such as food security, among others?
Yeah, so within the Sustainable Inclusive Business Center Kenya, we are hosted by KEPSA. So that is already a platform that provides that, where we organize events around themes, where we bring people together to network and to matchmake, and where we have a lot of knowledge available. But also, if we do not have it, we can direct you to others. Then there are many ways to drive a sustainable and inclusive business. So there are many more, and we try to all gather them on our platform, but there are many other supporters of this same concept as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can sustainability and inclusiveness maybe alienate poverty and also unemployment in your own view?
Yeah, for instance, if you look at, we have the Sustainable Development Goals, and they are there because we have quite some challenges to solve. And again, we have created them at the same time. So if we keep on going, doing the same things like we do now, we will not solve them. So to measure, for instance, only like a success of an economy and a GDP, what does it tell you about how many people are insured? What does it tell you about how many people really made a bit more money by the end of the month? It measures only a specific number, and that's not enough. So we have to really change that way of thinking and then drive the business towards a more sustainable way of operating.
Okay. So do you reach the people at the grassroots, both mamambogas who are who are part of the category of micro and small businesses? How do you reach to them to ensure that they adopt sustainable and inclusive business in small businesses?
Yeah, we always try to just inspire everyone with small and big examples. And even if you're two people and you're developing a new app, you can question yourself, what is the purpose of the app? So if is it contributing, is it adding value to the society? And also you might have two computers. After 3 years, that's e-waste. So you can recycle that. So we try and inspire everyone on all different levels. But of course, those are small steps, and you have to really look at the whole. And you have great examples also to reach out and to give examples, because if you, for instance, businesses have payrolls, and those are really powerful to give access to really great products. So for instance, again, if you mention a healthcare, people can pay for it out of their payroll little by little, and you reach a lot of people, and they realize that if you think about those things and you are not thinking short term, it changes your lives.
Okay, so a successful business is measured maybe by the impact it has on the community and the people. Maybe on the scale of 1 to 10, where do you place Kenya in terms of being inclusive and sustainable?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people always ask me, and sometimes because I'm from the Netherlands, they say, are you far back or much in front? And I think we have it both. Like, I think Kenya is ahead with a lot of things, and there's a lot we need to do still. So we're on other ends, we are still lacking. But we have the opportunity to just skip some errors we made in Europe, for instance. Like if we do manufacturing and industrialization without the big mistakes we made, we're actually much better off. So I think things are moving fast. If I compare, we have done 3 annual conferences. The level of the conference this year with 300 people, I think we are moving forward, definitely.
Okay. Maybe as we come to a close, you can share with us your last words and how and what you can tell business people out there in terms of being sustainable and adopting sustainability and inclusiveness in their businesses.
Okay, I think if you really want to change and you want to last and you want to be very sustainable, we have to focus all our energy not on changing the old, but to build the new.
And there's a quote you mentioned about Einstein. Maybe you can share with us about the...
Einstein said, and that is actually what he also mentioned, is we cannot solve issues with the same way of thinking as what we use to create those problems. And I think that's what we really need to take into consideration. And where is our responsibility? Look at what you're doing, and if you are more efficient, if you are innovative, if you can turn things around, then actually your business is going to flourish and it will last.
Okay, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that has been Karine Boomsma, who is the Director of Sustainable Inclusive Business here in Kenya. They are hosted by KEPSA, and if you go to KEPSA offices, you can find them there. And the topic has been Sustainable Inclusive Business, where you can create your business to be impactful to the people, to the planet, and also it can be profit driven. Now we end our segment there. We'll be right back.
Every 4 minutes is a chance for you to win big with Mega Dollar. Just go to Lipa na M-Pesa, enter paybill number 295888, account name KBC, and amount from 10 shillings or more. Then select your 10 numbers from 1 to 80 and send to 29588. You can win up to 30 million shillings. Start playing now and win. Mega Dollar. Big winners every 4 minutes.
Species have adapted to their environment through millions of years to perform exceptional feats of speed, power, agility, and grace. It ensures that they can pick themselves up after a fall. What happens when the environment is changed? Will they adapt in time? Will their performance be shaken?
You can give me the gun or give me back the money. And I'm really hoping for the money.
Give me the keys! Come on, hurry up!
Okay.
Get out! No, please, don't look at me.
Sooner or later, you gotta find out what it is really like to be black.
I told you he doesn't drink.
Wait! Me and my wife are just coming home from an award show.
Fix the lock. You come here, see how fixed it is. I am not yelling, I'm upset.
Then take the gun.
Not fix my lock, I want his name.
Papa!
Threatening gestures. Threatening gestures? You want to see a threatening gesture? I got a threatening gesture for you.
I know this man.
Nobody else here yet, and that's gasoline there. We need to get you out of here right away.
Welcome back. You are watching Channel 1 Business. Defining our big question again is what is needed to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya. And we've given you options with A, innovativeness, and B, need to do good. You can either choose all of the two. The question again is what is needed to drive sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya? A, innovativeness, or B, need to do good. And you can talk to us using our SMS line 22162, or you can use our social media platform at KBC on Twitter, or you can tweet me directly at Carol W. Jenga. Now we're moving on to other stories. Beautiful beaches, historical monuments, and a ride on vintage cars are the key selling points for Cuba's tourism marketing agents. Cuba attracts nearly 5 million tourists who bring in about 270 billion shillings, which is a tenth of the country's GDP. As John Jacob Curia, who has just returned from Cuba, narrates, Cuba communist policy, however, is viewed as punitive to those seeking business opportunities in Latin America.
The streets of Havana, Cuba's capital. One welcoming mark. Vintage cars and salsa, and the hospitality of the people of Cuba. The embargo by the United States on Cuba in 1958 had forced the country back to the drawing board. No importation, no exports, nor aid. Up until the time of the U.S. embargo, Havana was playing host to the highest number of tourists in the Caribbean. After the U.S. re-established diplomatic relations with Cuba 3 years ago, Havana is slowly regaining its place as a top destination for tourists in the world. Though we were in Cuba to attend a health conference and witness the signing of a contract for the 100 doctors coming to Kenya end of next month, we took time off to take a ride in one of those vintage cars.
This old Havana in Cuba, and the entire Cuba speaks Spanish. But lucky me, my driver can speak English. And well, I'm paying for this ride. 20 cook, by the way.
The economic scale is heavily tilted towards taxi drivers as they are among the richest. For a ride to the sandy beaches in Havana, it would cost you as much as 40 CUC, the equivalent of 8,000 Kenyan shillings.
Cuba is an island, and for sure tourism would be like the most important industry in the island. Now, since the last 3 years, tourism has been increasing here in the island, and which is really good for the Cuban society. Yeah. And people like to come here to see Havana because this is kind of like a whole museum. I mean, a big city that is a whole museum entirely. I mean, the city hasn't changed like in 60 years. So
modern cars that operate as taxis under the government program are perhaps the most unpopular, as most tourists prefer riding in these vintage vehicles that have Caribbean music blasting out.
It's hard to find these kind of cars now in the world, especially to could drive it around the city. If you want to see it, probably you need to go to a car show in a special day and a special time in the year. Here in Cuba, they drive along the whole year completely. Actually, Cuba has been called by UNESCO the only rolling museum in the world.
Historical monuments, such as in this public park, where Kenya's founding father Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's monument stands, also attracts hundreds of tourists keen on connecting with Cuba's political history and its inclination towards Africa. But there's a flip side to it. Even though the Cuban government from 1980 tried to reverse its policies to allow for private businesses, Cuba still remains unattractive for business owing to its communist approach. In fact, among the few Kenyans in Cuba officially, other than the staff of the Kenyan embassy in Havana, are about 10 students studying in the Latin American country.
For Kenyans also, this is an opening. The embassy is opening gates for Kenyans to come also and trade in Cuba. We have a Kenyan Airways which is starting its flight to New York in October this year, and it's 3 hours away from New York to Havana. That flight can come with our Kenyan tea, that flight can come with our Kenyan flowers.
And as we leave Cuba, there's one conviction, that Cuba has it together, harnessing all of its resources for the benefit of our people, with our systems tested and working.
Cuba is an island and amongst the big countries in the Caribbean. Tourists flock here in their numbers to not only learn from their culture, which includes salsa, but also to ride in these pompous vintage cars. Now, when you get a ride like the one I have just gotten, you say, muchos gracias, to mean thank you. John Jacob Curia for Channel 1, Havana, Cuba.
John Jacob Carrier for that story. A new satellite technology has been unveiled to help 5 African countries, among them Kenya, to manage food security and ensure timely interventions based on empirical data. The satellite harness data that is key in addressing food security. The new technology will be used in Kenya, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Ghana and Tanzania.
In a bid to empirically implement programs under the Big Four agenda, including food security, housing, infrastructure, and health, the government has embarked on use of data cube technology.
If we were to pull together satellite data for 5 countries like we're doing this week, and pull all of that together from year 2000 forward, that would have cost $40 million US, and for those of you in East Africa, that's 4 billion shillings. That is all free now, completely free and available.
The government of Kenya is a found member of this global partnership, actively ensuring that all its development decisions making is driven by data.
The Africa Regional Data Cube helps in targeted intervention so as to reduce wastage while ensuring innovation and effective productivity. The Africa Regional Data Cube will aid in identifying urbanization trends, the level and effects of deforestation, crop development, and water access, so as to allow practical decisions and interventions.
You all had is an open data space, and we'll be able to work with as a representative on how to access it, use it for the end user.
Space, I see these things called pixels about the size of a house, and I take millions of these things together in space and in time, and when I pack them together, I get this thing we call a data cube.
The tool will be used in Kenya, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Tanzania. Judith Akolo, The Business Insight.
Amidst diddling revenue from coal tax heads and a surging debt, the National Treasury finds itself in a hotspot on how to finance key development projects. In the draft budget policy statement, the Treasury is banking on support from the private sector to fund key projects worth 1.23 trillion shillings between this year and 2020 under the public-private partnership arrangements.
The United States plans to impose new sanctions against Iran, which produces around 4% of global oil supplies, after abandoning an agreement reached in late 2015, which limited Iran's nuclear ambitions in exchange of removing US-Europe sanctions. Oil prices rose sharply in response to the announced measures. Brent crude futures, the international benchmark for oil prices, hit their strongest since November 2014, at $77.99 per barrel, up 0.9% from their last close. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures also marked a November 2014 high at $71.04 a barrel, a 0.9% increase on their last settlement. Meanwhile, the Royal Bank of Scotland has agreed a $4.9 billion penalty with the U.S. regulators to end a long-running probe into its sanctions in the lead-up to the financial crisis. The bank's boss, Ross McEwan, said the agreement in principle with the U.S. Justice Department was a milestone. The probe focused on the sale of financial products, including toxic mortgage bonds, from 2005 to 2007. The UK government is now expected to start selling its 71% stake in the bank. In November last year, the government said it would start privatizing the Royal Bank of Scotland by selling £3 billion of shares before the end of the 2018-2019 financial year. But Chancellor Philip Hammond said he was reluctant to sell shares, while the Department of Justice probe was still to be resolved. Finally, Samsung faces new pressure on group structure after criticism by the antitrust head. South Korea's biggest conglomerate faced fresh criticism about its ownership structure, with the country's antitrust chief saying it was unsustainable. Korea Fair Trade Commission Chief Kim Sang-jo took aim at the group's circular shareholdings between companies such as Samsung Life, Insurance, and Samsung Electronics. The country's top financial regulator says that Samsung Life Insurance must consider ways to lessen the risk of having too much of its assets concentrated in one place, including selling some or all of Samsung Life's stake in Samsung Electronics.
Now to international business news. Roundup oil prices clocked up the highest in Asia as traders adjust to the prospects of renewed U.S. sanctions against major crude exporter Iran. Brent crude futures, the international benchmark for oil prices, hit their strongest since November 2014 at $77.89 per barrel, up 0.9% from their last close. Details of that story and more coming up right.
The United States plans to impose new sanctions against Iran, which produces around 4% of global oil supplies, after abandoning an agreement reached in late 2015, which limited Iran's nuclear ambitions in exchange of removing U.S. sanctions. Oil prices rose sharply in response to the announced measures. Brent crude futures, the international benchmark for oil prices, hit their strongest since November 2014 at $77.99 per barrel, up 0.9% from their last close. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures also marked a November 2014 high at $71.94 a barrel, a 0.9% increase in their last settlement. Meanwhile, the Royal Bank of Scotland agreed a $4.9 billion penalty with the U.S. regulators to end a long-running probe into its sanctions in the lead-up to the financial crisis. The bank's boss, Ross McEwan, said the agreement in principle with the U.S. Justice Department was a milestone. The probe focused on the sale of financial products, including toxic mortgage bonds, from 2005 to 2007. The UK government is now expected to start selling its 71% stake in the bank. In November last year, the government said it would start privatizing the Royal Bank of Scotland by selling £3 billion of shares before the end of the 2018-2019 financial year. But Chancellor Philip Hammond said he was reluctant to sell shares, while the Department of Justice probe was still to be resolved. Finally, Samsung faces new pressure on group structure after criticism by the antitrust head. South Korea's biggest conglomerate faced fresh criticism about its ownership structure, with the country's antitrust chief saying it was unsustainable. Korea Fair Trade Commission Chief Kim Sang-jo took aim at the group's circular shareholdings between companies such as Samsung Life, Insurance, and Samsung Electronics. The country's top financial regulator says that Samsung Life Insurance must consider ways to lessen the risk of having too much of its assets concentrated in one place, including selling some or all of Samsung Life's stake in Samsung Electronics.
Every 4 minutes is a chance for you to win big.